The Snail and the Whale by Julia Donaldson and Axel Scheffler. This is the tale of a tiny snail and a great big grey-blue humpback whale. This is a rock as black as soot, and this is a snail with an itchy foot. The sea snail slithered all over the rock and gazed at the sea and the ships on the dock. And as she gazed, she sniffled and sighed. The sea is deep and the world is wide. How I long to sail, said the tiny snail. These are the other snails in the flock who are stuck tight to the smooth black rock, and said to the snail with an itchy foot, Be quiet, don't wiggle, sit still, stay put. But the tiny sea snail sniffled and sighed. Then she cried, I've got it, I'll hitch a ride. This is the trail of the tiny snail, a silvery trail that looped and curled and said, Ride wanted around the world. This is the whale that came one night when the tide was high and the stars were bright. A humpback whale immensely long, who sang to the snail a wonderful song of shimmering ice and coral caves and shooting stars and enormous waves. And this is the tale of the humpback whale. He held it out of the starlit sea and said to the snail, Come sail with me. This is the sea so wild and free that carried the whale and the snail on his tail to towering icebergs and far-off lands, fiery mountains and golden sands. These are the waves that arched and crashed and foamed and frolicked and sprayed and splashed the tiny snail on the tail of the whale. These are the caves beneath the waves, where colourful fish with feathery fins and sharks with hideous 2-feet grins swam past the whale and the snail on his tail. This is the sky so vast and high, sometimes sunny and blue and warm, sometimes filled with thunderstorm, with zigzag lightning flashing and frightening the tiny snail on the tail of the whale. And as she gazed at the sky, the sea, the land, the waves and the caves and the golden sand, she gazed and gazed, amazed by it all. And she said to the whale, I feel so small. But then came the day that the whale lost his way. These are the speedboats running a race, zigging and zooming all over the place, upsetting the whale with their ear-splitting roar, making him swim too close to shore. This is the tide slipping away, and this is the whale laying beached in the bay. Quick, off the sand, back to sea, cried the snail. I can't move on land, I'm too big, moaned the whale. The snail felt helpless and terribly small. Then, I've got it, she cried, and started to crawl. I must not fail, said the tiny snail. This is the bell on the school in the bay, ringing the children in from their play. This is the teacher holding her chalk, telling the class, sit straight, don't talk. This is the board as black as soot, and this is the snail with the itchy foot. A snail! A snail! The teacher turned pale. Look, said the children, it's leaving a trail. This is the trail of the tiny snail, a silvery trail saying, Save the whale! These are the children running from school, fetching the firemen, digging the pool, squirting and spraying to keep the whale cool. This is the tide coming into the bay, and these are the villagers shouting, Hooray! And the whale and the snail travel safely away. Back to the dock and the flock on the rock, who said, How time's flown, and haven't you grown? And the whale and the snail told their wonderful tale of shimmering ice and coral caves and shooting stars and enormous waves, and of how the snail, so small and frail, with her looping, curling, silvery trail, saved the life of the humpback whale. Then the humpback whale held out his tail, and on crawled snail and snail after snail, and they sang to the sea as they all set sail on the tail of the grey-blue humpback whale. Like and subscribe for more Storytime every Friday. The Very Quiet Cricket, written and illustrated by Carle. One warm day, from a tiny egg, a little cricket was born. "Welcome!" chirped a big cricket, rubbing his wings together. The little cricket wanted to answer, so he rubbed his wings together, but nothing happened, not a sound. "Good morning!" whizzed a locust, spinning through the air. The little cricket wanted to answer, so he rubbed his wings together, but nothing happened, not a sound. "Hello!" whispered a praying mantis, scraping its huge front legs together. The little cricket wanted to answer, so he rubbed his wings together, but nothing happened, not a sound. "Good day!" crunched a worm, munching its way out of an apple. The little cricket wanted to answer, so he rubbed his wings together, but nothing happened, not a sound. "Hi!" bubbled a spittlebug, slurping in a sea of froth. The little cricket wanted to answer, so he rubbed his wings together, but nothing happened, not a sound. "Good afternoon!" screeched a cicada, clinging to a branch of a tree. The little cricket wanted to answer, so he rubbed his wings together, but nothing happened, not a sound. "How are you?" hummed a bumblebee, flying from flower to flower. The little cricket wanted to answer, so he rubbed his wings together, but nothing happened, not a sound. "Good evening," whirred a dragonfly, gliding above the water. The little cricket wanted to answer, so he rubbed his wings together, but nothing happened, not a sound. "Good night," buzzed the mosquitoes, dancing among the stars. The little cricket wanted to answer, so he rubbed his wings together, but nothing happened, not a sound. A lunar moth sailed quietly through the night, and the cricket enjoyed the stillness. As the lunar moth disappeared silently into the distance, the cricket saw another cricket. She too was a very quiet cricket. Then he rubbed his wings together one more time, and this time he chirped the most beautiful sound that she had ever heard. Like and subscribe for more Storytime every Friday. Elmer, written and illustrated by McKee. There was once a herd of elephants. Elephants young, elephants old, elephants tall or fat or thin. Elephants like this, that or the other, all different but all happy and all the same colour. All, that is, except Elmer. Elmer was different. Elmer was patchwork. Elmer was yellow and orange and red and pink and purple and blue and green and black and white. Elmer was not elephant colour. It was Elmer who kept the elephants happy. Sometimes he joked with the other elephants. Sometimes they joked with him. But if there was even a little smile, it was usually Elmer who started it. One night, Elmer couldn't sleep for thinking, and the think that he was thinking was that he was tired of being different. "Who ever heard of a patchwork elephant?" he thought. "No wonder they laugh at me." In the morning, before the others were really awake, Elmer slipped quietly away, unnoticed. As he walked through the jungle, Elmer met other animals. They always said, "Good morning, Elmer," each time. Elmer smiled and said, "Good morning." After a while, Elmer found what he was looking for. A large bush. A large bush covered with berries. A large bush covered with elephant-coloured berries. Elmer caught hold of the bush and shook it so that the berries fell on the ground. Once the ground was covered in berries, Elmer lay down and rolled over and over, this way and that way and back again. Then he picked up bunches of berries and rubbed himself all over, covering himself with berry juice until there wasn't a sign of any yellow or orange or red or pink or purple or blue or green or black or white. When he had finished, Elmer looked like any other elephant. After that, Elmer set back to the herd. On the way, he passed the other animals again. This time, each one said to him, "Good morning, elephant." And each time, Elmer smiled and said, "Good morning," pleased that he wasn't recognised. When Elmer rejoined the other elephants, they were all standing quietly. None of them noticed Elmer as he worked his way to the middle of the herd. After a while, Elmer felt that something was wrong. But what? He looked around. Same old jungle, same old bright sky, same old rain cloud that came over from time to time, and lastly, same old elephants. Elmer looked at them. The elephants were standing absolutely still. Elmer had never seen them so serious before. The more he looked at the serious, silent, still, standing elephants, the more he wanted to laugh. Finally, he could bear it no longer. He lifted his trunk and at the top of his voice shouted, "Boo!" The elephants jumped and fell all ways in surprise. "Oh my gosh and golly," they said, and then saw Elmer, helpless with laughter. "Elmer," they said. "It must be Elmer." Then the other elephants laughed too, as they had never laughed before. As they laughed, the rain cloud burst, and when the rain fell on Elmer, his patchwork started to show again. The elephants still laughed as Elmer was washed back to normal. "Oh, Elmer," gasped an old elephant. "You've played some good jokes, but this has been the biggest laugh of all. It didn't take you long to show your true colours." "We must celebrate this day every year," said another. "This will be Elmer's Day. All elephants must decorate themselves and Elmer will decorate himself elephant colour." That is exactly what the elephants do. On one day a year, they decorate themselves and parade. On that day, if you happen to see an elephant ordinary elephant colour, you will know it must be Elmer. Like and subscribe for more. Storytime every Friday. The Tale of Peter Rabbit, the original tale by Beatrix Potter. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a big fir tree. "Now, my dears," said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, "you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden." Your father had a terrible accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I am going out." Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the woods to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Flopsy, Mopsy and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down to the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. First he ate some lettuces and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes. And then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. But round the ends of a cucumber frame, who should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes amongst the cabbages, and the other shoe amongst the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that I think he might have got away altogether if he had not unfortunately run into a gooseberry net and got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows who flew to him in great excitement and implored him to exert himself. Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve which he intended to pop over the top of Peter, but Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind, and rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it had not had so much water in it. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath the flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each. Presently Peter sneezed. "Ka-choo!" Mr. McGregor was after him in no time, and tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out of the window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter. He went back to his work. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright. He had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in that can. After a time, he began to wander around, going lippity-lippity, not very fast, and looking all round. He found a door in a wall. It was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to her family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his water cans. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny.
He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scratch, 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 scratch. Peter scuttered underneath the bushes. But presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned towards Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could along a straight walk behind some blackcurrant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the woods outside the garden. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him till he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. I am sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made him some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter. 1 tablespoonful to be taken at bedtime. But Flopsy, Mopsy and Cottontail had their bread and milk and blackberries for supper.
Like and subscribe for more. Storytime every Friday. Brown Bear, What Do You See? By Bill Martin Jr. Pictures by Eric Carle. Brown Bear, what do you see? I see a red bird looking at me. Red bird, what do you see? I see a yellow duck looking at me. Yellow duck, what do you see? I see a blue horse looking at me. Blue horse, what do you see? I see a green frog looking at me. Green frog, what do you see? I see a purple cat looking at me. Purple cat, what do you see? I see a white dog looking at me. White dog, what do you see? I see a black sheep looking at me. Black sheep, what do you see? I see a goldfish looking at me. Goldfish, what do you see? I see a teacher looking at me. Teacher, what do you see? I see children looking at me. Children, what do you see? We see a brown bear, a red bird, a yellow duck, a blue horse, a green frog, a purple cat, a white dog, a black sheep, a goldfish, and a teacher looking at us. That's what we see. Like and subscribe for more. Storytime every Friday. Peace at Last. Written and illustrated by Jill Murphy. The hour was late. Mr. Bear was tired. Mrs. Bear was tired. And Baby Bear was tired. So they all went to bed. Mrs. Bear fell asleep. Mr. Bear didn't. Mrs. Bear began to snore. Went Mrs. Bear. Oh no, said Mr. Bear. I can't stand this. So he got up and went to sleep in Baby Bear's room. Baby Bear was not asleep either. He was lying in bed, pretending to be an aeroplane. Meow, went Baby Bear. Meow, meow. Oh no, said Mr. Bear. I can't stand this. So he got up and went to sleep in the living room. Tick-tock went the living room clock. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Cuckoo, cuckoo. Oh no, said Mr. Bear. I can't stand this. So he went to sleep in the kitchen. Drip, drip went the leaky kitchen tap. Went the refrigerator. Oh no, said Mr. Bear. I can't stand this. So he got up and went to sleep in the garden. Well, you wouldn't believe what noises there are in the garden at night. Do-wit, do-woo, went the owl. Snuffle, snuffle, went the hedgehog. Meow, sang the cats on the wall. Oh no, said Mr. Bear. I can't stand this. So he went off to sleep in the car. It was cold in the car and uncomfortable, but Mr. Bear was so tired he didn't notice. He was falling asleep when all the birds started to sing and the sun peeped in at the window. Tweet, tweet, went the birds. Shine, shine, went the sun. Oh no, said Mr. Bear. I can't stand this. So he got up and went back to the house. In the house, Baby Bear was fast asleep, and Mrs. Bear had turned over and wasn't snoring anymore. Mr. Bear got into bed and closed his eyes. Peace at last, he said to himself. Brrr, went the alarm clock. Brrr. Mrs. Bear sat up and rubbed her eyes. Good morning, dear, she said. Did you sleep well? Not very well, dear, yawned Mr. Bear. Never mind, said Mrs. Bear. I'll bring you a nice cup of tea. And she did. Like and subscribe for more. Storytime every Friday. Like and subscribe for more. Storytime every Friday.